Housing, the Seattle Office of Housing, Coalition of Ending Gender-Based Violence, and House of Our Neighbors. So thank you all for Seattle for helping me put this together, along with QLaw for helping me put this together, because as QPA, we're small, and the only reason we're mighty, they used to say we're so mighty. And I realized that we're only mighty because we work in collective power. And we do that when we were all volunteers. So thank you. All right, I think it's I see you over there.
You got it.
So we're going to ask each one of the panelists to introduce themselves. Please tell us your name, pronoun, and what hats you wear. And that could be anything from the organization that you might be working with, where you sit on in positions, and or all the other hats. Maybe you're a family member, maybe you're head of your household. Please give us your spiel in 1 minute. Your spiel in 1 minute.
All right, hey there, everybody. Aspen, I'm the program manager of Project Governance at Traction. We help trans people who are trying to move to places like Seattle. Basically, just find safety. It's really, really hard out there for so much of Seattle is really a small island where you can exist along the street and not really worry about it. So I guess other things that I do, I'm a registered through Capitol Hill, moved to Seattle for like kind of all over the place. And yeah, that's all that I got. That's all.
Hi everyone, my name is Christian Savannah. I use QLaw Governance. I am the staff attorney in Washington. QLaw, we try to promote the daily LGBTQ folks around the state. Do legal clinics, direct rep. Personally, I have a background in civil QA as well as immigration law. Rented for years, and a few years ago, had the privilege of buying a home in Tacoma. With my best friend, and we technically have one of our friends living with us, so I can kind of feel that word. And yeah, happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Macri. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of your two state representatives here in the 43rd Legislative District. I have served in that role for the last 10 years. I've been a Capitol Hill resident for the last 25-ish years. And I have been outside of the legislature. I work at the Downtown Emergency Service Center at TBSC that provides housing services for people who have experiences of homelessness, who are also living with serious disabilities, other challenges in their life. I've worked a lot on renter protection issues over the years, and I'm going into all of that because I think that'll come up in the panel conversation.
Like y'all, he's standard my shit. I get put down. I have the privilege of setting for the correct power eyes. Also the privilege of being success resolution. The privilege of figuring out the success of resolution. I do a lot of work on HIV AIDS case also, so I have privilege of being coaches to cancer. AIDS plan cancer means all right. Money coming into the county of Ireland, King, and so always. But above all, Andrew Soledad as well said that the meets here for other people. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Long Ho, and I'm currently the general manager for the Transcribers Union. But as most of my work in house justice is in my prior position. When I ran the organization that works with communities to basically empower themselves to fight using the law with organizing with activism, combining all of them. And so 18 years I represented 10 unions as a attorney. And prior to that, I started off as an organizer. So I was organizer, attorney, now being an organizer. I got my start organizing during the Academy University of Law with the ANC law back back in the 90s. So that's the perspective I'm from.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm J.P. Hirschstein, the state senator from the 43rd District and service as secretary here. I've been for 31 years. And I guess when I think about other rules, maybe the thing that first came to mind was the father of 4 sons, who one of them just graduated from Barfield, the other 3 are all at Barfield. And they're all really thinking about whether they'll be able to live in Seattle. I think that crisis of lack of affordable housing for people coming up is a really broad problem facing our community. So look forward to certainly into a discussion about that. I'll say also, I love being here. So for Baptist, the medicine master's for 30 years. We were upstairs. So it's place that's a lot of members.
The question that asked me from here,
I'm Joy Collins, where I have the honor of representing District 3 as your council president and also as district representative. I grew up, I'm also the one that as a daughter of the district. And the one thing that I'm grateful for is that I've lived in the house since 1947. And so to have that stability that I've had, for 42 years, I want everyone to have that, whether they're a ranger or whatever it is, that they can have a sense of home, not just housing, because I think home and housing, those are different things.
I just took this.
And there's one country to work. So that's, I'm looking forward to leading the conversation like that. Senator Peterson said, it just has to be a thing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raj Albert. I use she, her pronouns. I am a singer and songwriter from the Mayan Republic from Guatemala, and I found safety at home here in Seattle, Washington. And since I moved here, I have a village work with a couple of organizations, Spokane being one, with the Apple program, and now I have the honor of working with livable as housing program. Someone that is black and trans, a migrant across the country, right, transients, right? Someone who has also experienced houselessness. And so I get to come every day to work with mirrors and myself. Folks that are going through things that I've been through, and some folks that are teaching less about me as well. And so today I hope to bring not just my story, but their stories to life as we have a conversation today. It's a privilege to sit.
All right, can y'all hear me? Good afternoon. My name is Tonight Brown, and I'll be co-moderating today with Taylor. I got the invitation through my new spot at QLaw. Shout out New Work homies. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, I might have seen you. You might have seen me out here organizing for the last 16 years. It's getting higher. It was cute when it was 10. Now it's starting to, maybe I want to mention how many years. But yeah, I came into this work actually doing policy advocacy. I had no idea what that was. I'm being real truthful, right? I moved here from Chicago in 2010, and I got my first job. Chicago. Oh yeah, all day. Keeping it buck. But moved here not really understanding what that is, right? I understood I needed a job. I understood I'm an organizer, and I've been doing work in my community, and I was coming here to Seattle, the utopia. I know, right? And I got here and I realized though, the racism, sexism, homophobia look different, it's still all up and through here. And I understood that even doing policy advocacy, right, that doesn't mean that it leaves the building. There's a way that it can be done that's very not humanistic, that's not really building the power of the people. And so I really became connected with folks like Amijah, our community queen, my representative, and other spaces like the Village of Hope and the People's Institute and Black Prisoners Caucus and other people who came before me, Africatown, people who have been on the front lines fighting, really taught me how to organize in a way that's not just about changing a policy, but it's about building power. And that is a shift, right? And that takes not just us as community members, but that also takes, folks that are working in organizations, people that are gatekeeping at the legislature, at the city council, to be in a strategy with us that actually builds towards this. So it's a privilege to be here 16, however many years later, after being able to do work with, Blackout Washington, now working at QLaw, being able to do reproductive justice, shout out doulas for all, but to really come with an intersectional way to approach housing and really all the issues, because housing is the bottom line for a lot of things. And so really welcome y'all as a panelist. And we have a lot of panelists. We have a lot of brilliance on stage. So we're gonna go through and ask these questions. All you all are welcome to answer, but y'all know if it's you, right, that needs to take a little pause and make a little space for the next person. So we're gonna do our best, and we're gonna take a good pause too in between questions so that you all in the audience, y'all the real power in the room, if you have a question or something's coming up for you, we just encourage you to, of course, use your note cards, throw up a hand, think about it, so we can integrate what you're feeling and experiencing into the conversation. Is that fair? Oh, I don't hear you. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay, I just wanna make sure we together. Is that good? Okay, cool. So I think with our first question, we're going to just open it up very broadly, and also think, we're speaking to folks, online, so, make sure we speak clearly and into the mic so everybody can hear us. But also we're speaking to folks who may not have ever heard of you, may not ever have heard about the work that's happening, or even know the history of how people have been fighting since gentrification, redlining, foreclosure crisis, ... right? And so we really want to speak to our audience. So I'll ask you all, what, in your opinion, are the biggest challenges for queer folks that we're facing in Washington today, and what are the current laws or systems falling short, right? So what are the biggest challenges, and where are the current laws and systems falling short? Do you want to add more? Okay.
They want us to use this mic for.
Oh, okay, we're going to use this one? Oh, that's going to be interesting. Okay, get your singing and pass if you feel like it.
Did anyone want to speak to it first? Okay, so I have the privilege of actually working with queer, trans, Black, and Indigenous bodies every single day. And I think one of the things, especially being, I work for Sharon Grayson House, for those of you that don't know, and Sharon Grayson House is a part of a larger project through Health Through Housing. It's the Housing First initiative. And so just a short synopsis, they took the money that was going into the jail system, right? A system that has held Black bodies down for a long time. It's a prison and pipeline system that is disgusting, if we're going to talk about it for real, right? So we took this money, let's put it into housing, let's put it into something that can give folks grounding and stability, and then when we get them there, we're supposed to have this wraparound care that's supposed to help folks not just see themselves, but to see all of the possibility that their story brings with them, all the things that they've been through that have brought them to this point, right? To say, hey, listen, that's not the sum of who you can be, and that's not the sum of who we're gonna be, right? However, when we do things like this, a lot of times a barrier that comes up for our folks, once we get them in these places, is that the grassroots organizations that are doing the work have to then find out how we can actually successfully do the work. We can't tell folks we got mental health resources and all we got is a small group for them, y'all. We can't tell people that we're gonna get them connected to SUD counselors, and we can't afford to keep SUD counselors on the payroll, right? We can have vendors that come in, and we have amazing partners that come and talk to our folks and work with us and get us connected to community partners that will come in and maybe even give us tools. But for sustainable care, we can't always keep it going in our smaller organizations with our small teams of 4 to 15 folk trying to care for 32 other people. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? And so we have a system where we say, we're gonna create something that's gonna help you get to another place in life, but we don't take care of what happens in the middle. We have a rule at our house, it's housing first and it's food next. Housing first and food next. Because when we take out of those things that swamp our minds, that we go into survival mode behind, and we give people a little bit of peace, then we can start to deal with what they need. And we hear people say they need therapists. If they don't have connection to the insurance or insurance navigation background, or if the insurance doesn't cover them getting the type of therapy they might need that actually works for them, then we haven't really connected them to the resource.
We're going to get so much about affordability, but I think one of the greatest challenges for our community is the definition of what's a family and resources, because a lot of times we are not qualified for some of the resources to keep us housed, to get us housed, because we don't have what the policy defines as a family. And I think it's something that our elected officials should go back to Olympia, should go back to City Hall to say, you know what, a lot of our people are facing crisis, they are facing rental setbacks, they are facing so many things, but when they apply, because they are maybe single or they are not in the traditional family sense, we are not given a priority. So I think that's one of the major challenges in terms of trying to get resources. And I think also we look at the aging population in our community. As I said earlier on, the definition of family, the definition of who qualifies for help and assistance should be redefined from a state level to a county to a city level. Thank you.
Thanks for all that. I'm gonna just plus one to both of those issues that we just heard about. The number one thing I hear about is affordability, and what I hear is people need to move further and further and further away from community of support because of the cost of housing. I talk to people who tell me I believe the 43rd Legislative District is the district that the most number of people in the state of Washington used to live in. A lot of that is because the University of Washington is close by, and a lot of people have lived in this area at some point in their life. But a lot of it is because people can no longer afford to live inside the city of Seattle and have been pushed out. So that's why we worked on rent stabilization in the legislature. We did not get everything that we wanted on that bill, but we made big strides. And one of the big issues, I think, is that the protections that we do secure, we've got to fight to keep them. Last summer and ongoing, I worked with many people who are in the room today on a concerted fight by the nonprofit affordable housing industry to roll back the roommate ordinance protections for renters. And again, as Andrew's saying, those are key protections for LGBTQIA community members and families. And so part of the challenge we have is that we just have to keep fighting to keep the gains, the modest gains that we have already gotten.
I agree with everything. I just want to really quickly add, I think that one of the things that I see is that I believe our protections are strongest, not nearly strong enough, but strongest when folks are unhoused. But I think we need more support for folks who are, housing insecure, right? About to lose housing, or in housing that couch surfing, whatever the case may be. I think something that we should be focusing on is more flexible cash assistance programs, for example. I think, again, like maybe redefining what family means, right? Because in our community, chosen family, or, again, like things look a different way, our dynamics look different, right? Making space for that, allowing our policies to reflect that. I think that's a really a place where we could definitely strengthen our laws. Anything else? Yeah,
So I'd like to add to what has been said, particularly about legal protections, and it goes to the second part of the question in terms of what we need to change about the laws. And I think, as some have said, we have a lot of work to do in terms of getting stronger legal protections, but in comparison to other places, Seattle does offer some strong legal protections. But as a partially recovering attorney for 20 years, I really want to speak to the issue of legal protections generally. And I think what Seattle and Washington needs to do is, when we have legal protections, very often they're not worth very much, worth more than the paper that they're written on. And the reason is we need protections that have really strong enforcement mechanisms, and that means enforcement mechanisms by the actual jurisdiction passing them. So the city, the state, they need to be involved in actively protecting those individuals who are impacted by them, because it can't fall upon the victims of discrimination. It can't fall upon the victims of being displaced because of sleazy landlords who are exploiting the affordability crisis. It should not be their burden. So that's one. And the second piece, which really needs to change with the way that, I apologize to the elected officials here, but one thing that what we really have to work on when we're passing legislation is that there has to be a collaboration with the community to ensure that the community can enforce and are empowered to use those enforcements on their own. It has to be, we have to do the work, the jurisdiction, the government has to do their work to make sure the people are protected, but you also have to create legislation in a way that empowers the people to be able to do it. Renters should be able to fight their landlords without needing lawyers. People who've been discriminated against should be able to go and get help and say, I've been the victim of discrimination without having to need a lawyer. And as I said, I'm a lawyer, so I know exactly how frustrating and slow and difficult the legal process can be with or without an attorney.
Okay. So fine. Okay, that might be good enough for you.
The next question we're gonna ask is LGBTQIA plus youth, transgender people, and elders, and many QBIPOC community members experience higher rates of housing instability and homes. How can housing policy better meet the needs of people whose experiences aren't always reflected in the one-size solution?
Yeah.
Shall I start just because I'm holding the microphone? So I think we can learn from some attempts to do good things, and I think it goes exactly to what Lam said about working with impacted community from the very start. So we are fortunate. We're one of the few neighborhoods in the entire country that has an LGBTQ senior housing building, which is amazing. It's great. And we have an LGBTQ senior center within that building. But what we find is that many folks who are older, who are lower income, are looking for different kinds of housing than is available in that building. Maybe they need more supports. Most of the folks that I've talked to prefer to have a one-bedroom apartment compared to the many studios that are available in that building. And so just from the very beginning and how we design these interventions, we need to think about that, and just plus one on what the access to services looks like and how those are flexible, how they're funded. We do a good job in government of like having a good idea, but not really fully funding, honestly, what it really takes to keep people housing secure. And so doing the work with community from the very beginning, I think, is the key to getting it right. We're always improving, but we make kind of unforced errors because we're not listening to community in the very beginning. Has been my learning.
And going on that, before you speak, here's your community and all the organizations that count. So I'm just like really excited to hear that response and know that we are here.
Thank you so much, and fully agree with that. I think we desperately just need, thank you very much for that as well. We desperately need more resources available, period. Trans people make for trans people that are employed full-time, we make 50 to 60 cents on the dollar compared to what cis people make, and that's for people that are employed full-time. We have a much higher unemployment rate as well. So fundamentally, we often do not have the resources to be able to afford housing on our own. And often what this means is people are going to shelters, but there is the additional issue of a lot of the times these shelters are religiously affiliated, which sometimes is not an issue. They're, welcoming religious communities. But a lot of people are coming from red states where there is this association of these places are not friendly, and they're going to be super, super skittish as, say, a trans woman going to a religious women's shelter, and frankly, they would rather probably go sleep in the park or something like that. I think the other important thing to recognize is that Capitol Hill specifically and the neighborhoods immediately around it are unique as far as places go within the US, frankly. I don't think there's a better place to be trans, a place where you can walk down the street and have a lower likelihood of getting stared at than in Capitol Hill. That is a really wonderful thing. What it also means is that in this affordability crisis where housing here is so, so expensive and people are so desperate to stay here specifically, we need more housing resources for queer and trans people in Capitol Hill.
I just want to throw in, I think it's another thing. This is, sometimes we can have these conversations, and I think that we don't add the layers to the experiences we see, right? Because Capitol Hill is okay if you're black and trans. Does that make sense? And I'm going to say this with my full chest this time, and I was nervous to say it, but the experiences aren't always the same when our skin's a little different. And so we're talking about Capitol Hill, and then a couple of streets over, when you make it to Union, you're in the CD that is historically this black mecca, right? I'm from the South. When I moved here, the first place they told me about was by Central District. You hear me? When you get there, you're going to see your people. I saw my people for 4 months. And then I watched what used to be the hangout in front of the barbershop. That's ancestral practice. There's no space to hang out no more. You know what I mean? There's ultra surveillance. So when we're talking about trans bodies, like you mentioned, like you just mentioned, like a lot of our folks, if they're in sex work, if our folks are with their chosen families, you know how many of our people lose housing because they were just trying to house the people they call kids. So we have to add that into our conversations as we're talking about making our plans, and we have to come against the grain that says chosen family and the monolith of what the experience is, or just because we put a bunch of flags up that it made it a mecca. Because since I think Deontay Damper, I quote him in this moment, he's not in here, but he grew up in this city. I call him the mayor of South End, you know what I mean? And Deontay Damper will tell you about how he used to run looking for safety in Capitol Hill and couldn't find it. But he still couldn't find it when he went home to the South End. He couldn't find it in the Central District. So when you talk about people that have had to fight for approval to walk with our heads held high, we had to fight for approval to come out and put on a really bad shoe. You know what I mean? So that's the journey that we go through, and that's all of us. But it's a little different when you step on that street, and I don't know if you're looking at me because you're trans or if you think I'm about to steal something from you. Yeah? Okay.
I've been very intentional of listening, because I feel like the first two questions are for people that have been in this space, and so I can listen to what are the gaps that policy-wise that we're missing. And one of the things I know, just on a big spectrum, in Seattle we're really good at passing legislation and policy and focusing on that, but not the implementation piece. And I think that's really the just being, because I am not a career politician, just a community member, and I would see how the well-intended policy, how it would impact people. And oftentimes what I heard the most was, hey, Joy, number one, we don't have resources to make sure that our community fits into this legislation. Number two, we don't have the technical assistance to try to figure out who's, that's a big piece in a lot of the stuff that we're passing. So I know, for example, affordable housing piece. I've heard people say, we need to build more housing, and affordable housing providers we want to, but it's hard because we have issues with permitting. We want an ombud to make sure that we can get through the process right. We want a technical assistance person so we can have, certain things. We don't have money for architect. There's certain things that are barriers that when you pass really good legislation about affordable housing or pieces, that you don't think about the other folks that might not have some of the resources that other people have. And so you have to dedicate the city does, has to dedicate a lot of those to make sure that it's an equitable playing field. So I'm gonna continue to listen, but that's from my vantage point at a city level, understanding that some of the well-intended policies we have don't have the impact we're having because of intentional resources to make sure that people have transparent access to those.
I think to try to see the feelings and I'm so with you, yeah. I see. But just to make sure I don't want this mic anymore. Talking about implementation, right? And a lot of that because the anxiety ideas, policy, understand what would be your lower with self, the see what is you see, that's quality and then relationship. I feel they hold it there, it's not to know this without, and we're in the base. Years ago, we was coming together and stay together to see that they already said that they have to work steam before they need to have. And so, yeah, it's being a little about that to be them in the state side. I don't even like.
There we go. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Can you stand up, please? Sure.
Yeah.
Who is your community? Because I keep hearing the word community. Who is it? Secondly, I don't live in Seattle, but I live in South King County. Is there, for our elected officials, is there any type of collaborative work that you're choosing to do? Because people are being pushed south. People are being pushed out. Well, how are you helping yourself? How are you helping those who are in legislation, your partners in business? Are you?
I just do it. Jelly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really uncomfortable realities about this district, do you all have any idea what the median family income is in the 43rd district at this point? $237,000 is the median, which is why we need everybody to vote for the millionaire's tax this fall. Thank you. You know, and the result of that is that my colleagues, Claire Wilson, who represents the 30th District, Federal Way, Claudia Kaufman, who's in the 47th District, Covington, Kent, Tina Orwell, who represents the 33rd District, which is also Kent, Des Moines, Bob Hasagawa, who represents just south of Seattle, Renton. You know, they are absolutely experiencing this outflow, this migration of people from our district. And those cities are really struggling with a lot of problems that used to be thought of as Seattle problems. So we are constantly in community with them, talking with them about what we need to do. You know, and I think the opportunity there is that it's no longer perceived as just an urban set of problems, right? These are problems that are shared really throughout Central Puget Sound, and beyond that in Spokane and in Vancouver, like everywhere, people are starting to see the importance of housing policy and needing to make dramatic changes so that we can bend that curve. So I think in some ways it's a failure of ours that we haven't been able to keep folks able to stay in, like my friend Joy here, in the houses where their families have been. On the other hand, it really opens up an opportunity for work across a lot of geography and for people who see those same problems in their own communities.
I will say a lot of these, particularly renter-related issues, had been seen as mostly Seattle issues for many years. And I've been working in earnest on expanding tenant protection since 2018. That's when I dropped my first rent control bill and just cause eviction protection bill, both
those policies took many years, but I had deliberately partnered with legislators from other parts of the state, and in particular in King County. So like Jamila Taylor, who represents Federal Way, was my key partner on just cause eviction protection, in part because Federal Way led the state in doing a voter enacted just cause protection for residents there. And because the suburban context is very different than it is here in Seattle, and so it's really important to partner. Jamie and I are both members of the legislative LGBTQ caucus. We are small but mighty, I guess I'll take Taylor's statement there. And we have been trying to get better about staying connected with community, both ahead of legislative session and during legislative session. So we do, during legislative sessions, we've tried to better align our gatherings with community-based organizations to align with the deadlines during the brief legislative session calendar. So a number of organizations who are here in the room have participated in that. If you haven't and want to, come talk with me. But Claire Wilson, who is the senator from Jamila Taylor's same district, who Jamie just mentioned, is co-chair with me of that caucus, and trying to be deliberate in connecting with the organizations that are involved in communities is really important. A lot of times the statewide organizations are the ones that are providing support in communities, or the really tiny ones that we may not otherwise hear of. And so we do try to make some effort to be expansive in our outreach to community-based organizations. It's hard.
So let me try and take a stab at that. Community is the people. For me, as someone that likes helping, is my community is the people I could speak for, is the people whose lived experience mirrors mine, and is the people who might not want to be upfront with their voice, but people like us that are bold enough to come out and speak for them. Community for me is family without blood.
Because I think it's important to note also, because we're talking about queer stuff, okay? Like, I'm TT, I'm mama, walking around the block. If I see a baby that I know, you could be 10 years older than me, but depending on who you are, they're gonna yell, hey auntie, hi mom, hi baby, how you doing, right? Because a lot of people came here looking for the word that we've all thrown around, asylum, looking for safety, and to be honest, it's there on paper, but it's not there, and as y'all mentioned already, implementation and practice. And so in real time, we at Lavender Rights Project and Urban League, the Crescent Collaborative as a whole, we're talking about Friends of Little Saigon, and I'm bringing out different people in different areas on purpose because we all have to find each other somewhere. When I met Imaja, I found my community. When I met you, I found my community. I met Taylor, I found my community. Me and Andrew, our community. Me and Joy, our community. You know, we've sat together, we've supped together. Ebo is right here in here with me, who is a mentor, who is my boss, my director, an artist, a poet. There are bodies in here that are our community, and a lot of times in queer spaces, community is too small of a word. We are each other's family. We are each other's resource. We're each other's hubs. And sometimes I don't find my hub at our meeting place because it's not safe no more. So I think that's why you brought that question up. So thank you so much for that.
And I'll just be super quick. Community for me is anyone who wants conversation and not conflict. And so seriously, like, people that want to have a conversation about it, and if they want to move to the conflict, I get it, okay? But to start with the conversation first, I think is really key. And then the second thing, and I'll just say it, I'm unapologetically black all the way, especially within some of the policies that we're making. And sometimes, you know, people might see it very, very differently, and the black community is not a monolith. at all, right? And so, but I respect that, and I don't ever say that I speak for Black community. I try to just create a pathway to help elevate the voices because they can speak for themselves. So.
So first off, I do want to clarify to say I do not believe in lack of conflict. I am queer. I am not specifically lesbian, gay, trans, or bi. I am queer, and that is an act of rebellion. That is an act that will inevitably create conflict. And with that, I want to go back to the question that we kind of skipped over. We are talking about we were talking about queer and trans homelessness in Seattle, and how can we have a question about that with an entire panel of experts and legislatures, and nobody talks about the systemic violence and destruction of property, invasion of property that is the daily sweeps that the city we're on. How can we talk about homelessness and not talk about sweeps?
Come on.
Great question, and I don't even consider that conflict. That's an excellent question about conversation. So let me just clarify. What you're saying is that it's the city's continuing to do sweeps of people that are experiencing homelessness, and you're saying, how can we even talk about? I just want to reiterate what your question was. Can you reiterate that, please? I'm sorry.
How can we have a question about queer and trans youth that are homeless and not talk about the actual issues facing them, that is the destruction and invasion of
I got you. Okay, I got you. And thank you for that question as well. I think there's, so for me personally, I know that there's different sides of the coin where people are saying like, hey, we need to stop what's happening on the street in terms of like some people name them sweeps, some people call them encampment resolutions, you can name them whatever it is. I understand that we're talking about moving people from a different place and disturbing their home, right? Can we agree on that? Okay. And we also don't have a lot of shelters to be able to put folks, and that's why I continue to support the mayor's plan on implementing the shelters that are over in Inner Bay and other places, making it really, really easy for us to build shelters so we can offer places for folks to go. And so that's where I stand on that in terms of, you know, just making sure that we have more places to go for people that are experiencing homelessness, and then also to completely supporting a lot of our trans and queer organizations that are trying to build shelter, like the Broadway flats that are on over there off of next to the light rail station that would be dedicated just for our queer community. So like I'm going to continue to support those policies, and we'll continue to work on the departments that are targeting folks so they won't do that, and they have places for people to go. But I don't have a great answer specifically on that to say like it will stop tomorrow, because a lot of that stuff I actually just don't have absolute control over as a council member. But I do support us having places for people to go so they're not in different public spaces.
Can I just mention one thing in relationship? So, I mean, I appreciate your question so much. I think it's part of our country's continuing and really disintegrating attack upon poverty. I think we're seeing across the country just laws being enacted saying it's now a crime to be poor. And that's not acceptable. And so I just wanted to mention quickly, Tequila on Monday is likely to pass another banishment law saying that if you are tenting on city property, you can be arrested, removed, even if you have no shelter, and then imprisoned up to 90 days because it's a misdemeanor, or a fine up to $1,000. So this is not acceptable. And speaking about, we need to act in collaboration with lots of other communities. If you're available, it's Monday at 7 p.m. Either testify in person or virtually to tell Tequila you cannot criminalize being poor.
I'm Heidi. So I'm a low-income renter. I'm in community housing, MSTD building that largely I didn't choose. And they didn't say it was a remodel. She did all this sign about the collaboration of people who lived in it.
so that I create some problems for just the design that kind of works for living in it. And so I'm wondering about like this. And I've also looked around at private market kind of rentals, and I found them unaffordable. They didn't have the roofs system largely, and of the ones that I looked at, and the junk fees are just not accessible. So I'm wondering, like, where can I find a rental that fits both my income and my what I would want in designing and building? So what are we doing about that? I hear that there's some kind of movement to address the roofs and the junk fees. So,
Yes.
Let me address on the MFT. I've also been on the MFT, and I know, like last month or so, we did have the MFT come to the Renters Commission, and designing was one of the things we spoke about. So it's something that, because they are doing a review of MFT right now, and I think designing of the units and how it's placed in buildings is being looked into. That I want to say with you, but also I also want to use what you said as a challenge to elected officials. Also, yeah, the panel is, why don't we have a database of units that are empty, and why don't we have policies where they are easily accessible to people facing housing crisis in a way that fine, if they want to give a tax credit or whatever to the landlord, but having units empty for months and no penalty, in a way, to me is ridiculous, because it plays a role into the accessibility and availability of housing. It's not just, as you said earlier on, it's not just when people are thrown out that we should care. We should care when they are when things start going downhill, when they lose a job, when they lose the loved one, when the breadwinner is no more. How do we sustain those in housing, those going through the process of losing housing, and those who have lost housing? Thank you.
And I just want to quickly mention regarding junk fees. Several of the organizations here, including B Seattle, Transit Riders Union, Ben Rubs, we're advocating right now on the Seattle City Council on legislation that would ban junk fees and ensure to protect tenants from having to deal with them.
So I'll just say that renter protection policies and investment in affordable housing is some of the most challenging and contentious policy work that gets done at the state level. It's like environmental protections, taxes, gun violence prevention, and tenant protections. These are all really, really kind of in a category of difficulty. If the Seattle passes the junk fee bill as the mayor has submitted and Councilmember Foster has introduced, it will be the strongest junk fee protections in the state. There are So thank you to the organizations that are working on this. We have attempted over many years to do fee regulation at the state level. We had very strong fee regulation in the rent stabilization bill, but we did not have the votes to get those protections out of the House. So we've got to work on Democrats on these issues, because it'll be great if Seattle has strong protections. It's great. Bellingham has good protections. Olympia has good protections, but no other cities have protections on junk fees. So we need a statewide policy on that. That's a priority of mine, as is AG enforcement. We did get AG, Attorney General enforcement on rent stabilization. I've worked for many years to get the Residential Landlord Tenant Act to be subject to the Consumer Protection Act, so that way folks have recourse with the state in order to address issues that come up where their landlord is not upholding their end of the bargain when it comes to tenant protections. One of the big challenges we have is the cost. So to all of these things of like, there are strategic conversations that we all need to be in conversation between community members, community-based organizations, and legislators about the very difficult choices we make about how we move policy forward, because we're constantly making compromises because of opposition. So we need the people power, which is the organizing, and we need to go in eyes wide open, because it oftentimes is not because of lack of champions working on this, but it is because of the strength of the opposition, which is very much tied to money and politics, that we have not made the strides on all of the things that you're talking about and many people here have been talking about.
I am an intersex teen victim of Seattle, very good at work. I'm dealing with very brutal hatred and bigotry from hostile anti-intersex bigoted tenants, 2 of them, 808 and 607, and the management's not doing anything except for what? To side with them, protect them, defend them, fight with them, to finish eradicating me and other intersex people like me off this earth now. And I know there's pride place, but that's only for seniors.
Yeah.
That needs to be opened up to disabled intersex people like me, so I can be in safe, appropriate housing, where I can be myself and not have to hide.
So, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate him learning a lot, even from the audience. So when I think about the disproportionality, we'll see that. And so that is our country really being steeped in racism. We have a caste system here for access to privilege, power, and money that is based on race. So we see the disproportionality of outcomes because of what the group is of seeing it. Black, most part the way I see it, and of course our indigenous communities. So when we're thinking about the policies here, yeah, I don't even use the word equity because I don't want to see everybody on the same, suffering. Everybody on the same playing field suffering. But I am curious to think about how our elected leaders, or these organizations, and even community members, how are we going to move a policy that we're not censoring those who are disproportionately impacted? Because I'm hearing all the things, and what's happening right now is not new in this city, or this state, or this country. So I'm really curious, how are y'all addressing that when we have a state that won't let you move things about race, even though we're seeing communities being disproportionately impacted? But I am seeing our state center for certain types of refugees, not all of them, certain refugees for now, certain groups for now. It is not addressing the disproportionality that's happening, and I will say it's invisibilizing, at least you're not apologetically Black, it's invisibilizing the experience of my community being gentrified, pushed south, now as a South End issue. But all the resources I'm mainly coming back here to Seattle. Can you help me with that? And then can I get a community for people in the audience that when y'all talk about the issue that you're not Black, that you still bring that forward? Because my understanding of the trans community is Black trans women being killed, violence, being unhoused, being unemployed. So when I see that start to level up and change, then I understand our community issues.
Well, okay, so this is all I'll say is, I think one of the major problems when it comes to grants, funds, and things to communities is the government depends so much on generic community-based organizations. When they earmark funds, there is no accountability to those organizations that, okay, how much are you serving the LGBTQ plus community? How much are you serving the BIPOC community? How much are you serving the trans community? And to me, it is ridiculous because we are, we are sidelined in receiving from these funds because all they care about is, oh, they are serving community, but what are they really serving? Who are they serving? So I think we need more specific earmark grants and line items in budget targeted to communities like the Black community, like the trans community, like the LGBTQ plus community. Enough is enough with generic earmarking. Thank you.
Okay. I actually want to lift something because it's hard for me to see Imagine in this room with me right now. And even hearing your question, it's because there are people doing it, though. You're doing it. You're doing it. And folks like Moni Tep and Sabrina Rodriguez from our decree department, and I mentioned them earlier, but she just moved to the Department of Neighborhoods. But Quinn, who was with Little Saigon, going around giving safety trainings. So we're doing it. The issue is, and I know we love this word in our nonprofit industry, right? But we love to do things in our silos. Now, is that a bad thing? No. Because the most transparent places we typically can be is with folks that we have commonality with. The issue is that we get good meat at our tables and we don't take it to the next table. So if you figured out a way to make your community 2% safer, bring me your 2%. If you figured out a way to make it where your local businesses that are in your neighborhood are pouring back into your nonprofits, into your housing facilities, and volunteers are showing up, take that 2% and come teach me your model. Let's come to one another with not just what our issues are, but hey, baby, this is what I got right. Go try it and tell me what you see next. Because then we can flush out some more things.
You bring up a good point. So the other thing is also adding to all that, we can tease out our data around showing up so that our legislators, our city council members can see that the data shows what you're exactly talking about, how these numbers are being, are actually weighing in. QPA has been collecting data. We've been collecting data for years. We have that data to have those conversations, and we also need to fund that data so that we can continue to collect that information with our community rather than it being owned just by one entity, and so that the community organizations actually can tap into the community the way that is best seen by the community, because it's a trusted messenger, right? And we have to trust those folks that we're giving our data to. And so with that information, we are able to tease out the different pieces around getting those answers and providing that for our legislators to help move money and those line items that you were talking about, Andrew. So that's part of what I'd like to see as an organization. I'm going to give this to you. No, your question.
Hi, my name is Gwen Kirkland. I am a trans woman from the Bible Belt, another refugee. So I'm running for Congress. Yeah. I was wondering that the people who are doing things are up front. So I want to not be heard, but I want to hear from you. What can I do when you send me to Congress to make your jobs easier, to make your, whether it's legislation or community service, what can I do to make it easier for you? And also to all of you in the room and watching at home, I'll be here till the end and after this event, so I want to hear from you too. But to you guys doing the work, can you tell me what I can do for you when you send me to the Capitol? Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time when we talk about, these problems like, queer and trans people being unhoused, all kinds of shit like that, there is this instinct that a lot of people in politics have to find some sort of perfect situation, some sort of like ideal bill that inconveniences nobody, and everybody comes out ahead. And I think fundamentally that misunderstands what is going on, which is this is a question of resources. Our trans community, our queer community, our black community has been deprived of resources for so long, and it is not like, there isn't like, oh, some like perfect thing that you can do. It is going to be a fight in which we are going to have to confront the people that have the resources and do stuff like the millionaire's tax that's being put in place and move those resources from the people that have them to the people that need them.
All right, so just adding a little bit of context on the resources. I don't know, maybe it is 16 years. I've been to a lot of these meetings every year, it does come down to most money, but I'm just throwing these out here for salvation one. I don't think that it should really don't have the resources, money for the meetings, so it's a right. We say this a lot in our organizing, is that it's not about a lack of resources, it's about like the power tax. And so we're coming down with like Congress, your city council, your state legislature. It's say like I don't see anybody, CEOs out there in suits waving gay signs. Like that's including the $1,000 but now they're including men. They're walking into that, they're having conversations back there, so look, they're speaking the phone call. How do we get the relationship on value that 37 Congress, like however you already say, but how do we get to that relationship our values, like this is how we have to believe we should have your back. That's how I can get access to the resources in any way. But you got work to do. Questions, I want to make sure we don't expect the other people, but I know we have to get other folks in the audience that want to bring things out, so feel free to pivot and move like you need to move. But just throwing this out here, this is something like I said, 3 weeks ago, okay. And but I keep hearing things, I'm picking up, what y'all putting down, and I'm hearing a lot about who's talking about Washington, the sanctuary state, Seattle's a refuge, right? Queer trans folks coming, fleeing from other states, going to be oppressive policies, oppressive, but coming here and saying, I came here, like, this is utopia, and running into a wall with me, right? And so the question is, what is kind of influx of folks? It's not the first one, it's kind of like a little thing that's floating around, but what's going to happen when the influx of folks coming through who are probably going to be facing a level of houselessness, right? What's the plan to see? What's being put in place? What's being talked about right now? So I'm just going to throw that out there, not just to the legislature, but also to our beautiful gatekeepers who know things, who know people, and who are doing the work on the ground. If you don't know what you're hearing too, let us know what you're hearing, and then we will pass it around to somebody. So I say one as in paper. So as more people see states in Washington, the homelessness continues to rise. How are states and the community prepared to meet this community? What must we do to prevent displacement? How those that are currently experiencing homelessness and create an affordable housing so that everyone's opportunity to live safely and
I'm sorry for talking a lot, but I feel like because I'm in all the spaces where this conversation is happening, I feel like, that was so targeted. As my role on the Seattle LGBTQ+ Commission, I have the privilege of representing the commission on the interdepartmental team task force that the mayor created regarding the influx of the trans community members here and making Seattle to be a safe and secure state. So the meeting, will be rounding up in August, and there are 3 aspects that we're looking at. We're looking at the community navigation program. That's one. We're also looking at what are the urgent needs now. Cash assistance for housing, food. We have people sleeping on the tables in people's houses. What can we do now? What are the urgent needs? Where can we get money from in the city and bring to the urgent needs? We talk about the supplementary budget, and then we also have the long-term goals, and also on the Seattle LGBTQ Plus Commission, and I also wrote an op-ed about this earlier on this year, is we're also trying to see, we're pushing for, and if I don't get this right, Jessa is going to be on me, so I have to get this right. We're pushing for an office of queer and trans affairs. and you know, a lot of cities do have that, and one of the reasons we are looking at that is because queer issues are not just, you know, it's always civil rights that they dump us there as civil rights, but it goes beyond civil rights, you know, immigration, housing, education, and so forth. And I always use the example of Nepal, which is they have a queer ministry, a women and queer affairs ministry for a whole country. And we have offices all around the states here in the USA for queer and trans affairs. So there is nothing that stops us from getting that. But this is where you're coming, because the mayor's transition team and the mayor's plan was black and white in city center, posted there on the poster, creating that office. You're coming, you're right to your city council members, right to the city attorney, right to the city mayor, and come public speaking, please. And I just want to praise our council president and council member Joy, who has been a great supporter for this movement and has been supportive of it. Thank you.
You haven't. But I will say this, because I support the entire, thank you, Andrew, some of the outcomes that that are coming to council regarding what is needed. The first thing we heard was, Joy, we need resources ASAP. And so that's why we talked about the mid-supplemental budget, and that is in council, so there's going to be some things working on there. But I will say this, I do appreciate the commission, because when they told me, and Andrew and everyone said, look, we would like a LGBTQIA office, I said, yes, and will you support a black office too? And they said, absolutely. And I said, I need your support on that if we do that in conjunction. So I hear what you're saying, Amijah, and they know where I come from too, because I say, hey y'all, can I get y'all to support this as well? Because they're equally as important to me in that space as we're advocating for that. So I just want to just shout that out and just thank y'all for that as well.
I'm going to try to keep these mics from wrapping up in everybody, so I'm going to pass them behind the chair, okay? But I just want to throw out just a few numbers to us. There are approximately 5,300 beds in shelters available here in, I want to say, either Seattle or King County. I don't remember. I was in King County. In King County as well, there are 5,600 people that don't have anywhere to live. In the first year and a half of being in a program, I think about 30% of folks end up back in houselessness. And so looking at this circle or cycle that we see, right, there are organizations, and King County is working with folks to open new shelters and find beds, but those beds come 20 to 30 at a time. So we have buildings around here that we're trying to go around and see, hey, can this be turned into something? Can someone take over this? Is this a project that someone can handle? Do you know what we really need? We need all of us to hear our voices. So how y'all are in this room, so unapologetically talking, I must tell you, great job today, loved ones. Great job today, community members. Do not stop. Hearing you tell us today warmed my heart so, because I know exactly what you're going through, darling. Do you hear me? And so I want to tell you thank you for sharing that today. And every time you get a chance to, every time you get to call out something that's not right for a neighbor, call it out. Your voice might be the one that spurs the next idea, because our goal is not completion yet, because we can't do it yet. But our goal is progress, and I think that we can make it. I just want to throw that out there.
far as solutions, I mean, honestly, I don't have that. I'm not super connected to what's going on in the city, but I am connected to what's going on with trans people in the city and in this country. And I'm in a room full of cis people. It's a little unusual for me to have a majority cis audience. So I guess one of the things that I really want to underscore is I do not think most cis people understand what the situation on the ground is actually like, how bad things really are. I think most trans people understand it intuitively, but so far, so we're Traction. We're a small organization that helps trans people relocate. Again, we're tiny. We're not a huge group. These days, after the laws that were passed in Idaho and in Kansas, we're averaging about 150 to 200 requests for help. I've gotten 5 so far just this morning, and it's not even 2 p.m. One of those was somebody in Tennessee who does not have housing, who has been cut off from health care. Tennessee government is no longer providing access to hormones. So for the cis people in the audience, I guess I want you to imagine what it would be like if the government was forcibly injecting you with testosterone or estrogen, whichever one you prefer the least, and what you would do to get to a place where that is not the policy. That is how desperate people are. People are coming to Seattle regardless of whether or not we want them to come. Personally, I want them to come, but this is a crisis that is happening, period. We got to do something about it.
Okay. Another off my screen. We have some great questions of like defining laws and completely what does that mean. I wanted to talk about power. What does power actually mean? So I know we have organizers, we have legislators. For me as an organizer, my goal is to empower other people to stand up and do things so that I'm not the voice for it. Because our people, these people have to represent themselves. And our elected officials need to represent us. But if we don't have that power that we're building and we're not confident in our solutions, y'all can't actually represent us to begin with. So I'm really curious to hear from you all, like, how are you defining power? How are you committing to building power with the people? And for our elected officials, how are you remaining accountable to people power and not corporate power?
Thank you for saying that. And here's a couple of things that I go by. I'll say if your elected official doesn't know you by name or face, you just reach out to them more. Please do, because the halls of Olympia are filled with corporate lobbyists, and they make their presence very known, and they know how to get in touch with legislators. And I hear all the time from community members, we know you're good, we know we don't have to reach out to you, we know we have your vote on the thing we care about, but it is really, really important to be in authentic relationship with your elected officials. So I do know many people here, I do in this room, I have their numbers in my phone because they have done the thing where they make themselves very much known. So I want to encourage that. And then you need to be calling on us to show up. I mean, I have a way I approach my work when I'm doing policy making to make sure that we are including people who are directly impacted by the policies. Not all legislators make that a point in doing their work. So it is incumbent on the rest of us to make sure that you notice when legislators are not doing that. Legislators don't always just intuitively know everything that's happening in community. And so I think make sure that when you're thinking about asking people to show up for things, that you're also including your legislators when it's appropriate, not when you're having your strategy organizing meetings necessarily, but I think legislators want to be in conversation with community, and so I think the relationship happens 2 ways. Legislators need to call people in, and community members need to call legislators out when they're not doing that?
So I just want to start with like a super quick anecdote. A few years ago, I was renting here in Seattle, and we got all of us in the same building got a note that said, "We're going to be raising your rent by a couple $100s in 3 months." And at that point, I knew that the law had just changed where we need a 6 months notice, not a 3 months notice. So what I did is I waited until the day before they thought that they were going to raise the rent, and I sent a nice little demand letter saying, hey, that's actually against the law. You have to give us a 6 months notice. And the next day they said, JK, we just found out by a really friendly tenant that we're going to push it back another 6 months. So I was able to get that for every single person in our building. And the reason I was able to do that is because I was in law school. I knew the law. I knew how to write a demand letter. I knew how to implement a demand letter. These are things that again, it's one thing to have laws protecting folks, it's another thing to know how to implement them, right? So the challenge is how do we empower folks, right? And it goes beyond know your rights. It goes beyond events like these, right? I mean, for example, we have more folks working in, like resources than we have people actually attending, right? So again, it's a difficult question, right? How do we get more folks in the room? How do we empower folks to know what their rights are? It's something that I think we all need to be discussing. We need to be working towards, right? Because again, it's one thing to make the law. It's another thing to have folks know how to implement them successfully, so that we're actually, empowering folks to know how to, make a demand letter, that they're aware, of anti-retaliation laws, for example, right? I just think that empowering folks with the laws that we have in place and, strengthening those laws is the next step. And how we do that, I think it needs a greater discussion, I would say.
So actually, thank you for that. I was initially not going to respond, but you catalyzed something that I think should be mentioned. I think particularly for legislatures and also anyone who's working in policy, there are ways, speaking as both an organizer and an attorney, that you can actually incorporate really empowering options and enforcement mechanisms when you pass legislation. One thing that I wanted to shout out, for example, is in Tacoma, there's a ballot initiative that will be coming out in November where the law requires the landlord to negotiate with tenant unions. And that's actually something we don't have in Seattle. So something that maybe Seattle City Council might be seeing soon would be something comparable. And so I think that's something that when we think about using legal protections as an avenue for activism, for social change, we always have to think about how does the person, we keep talking about the impacted community, but the individual person who experiences that violation, how are they able to then negotiate rectifying that situation? And so things like creating legislation that requires allows for non-attorneys to be able to enforce their own right is absolutely critical. And I think that any legislation that is passed in Seattle, whether it be LGBTQIA plus rights, renters' rights, immigrant rights, that has to be a piece of it. Now, putting on my organizer hat, I think one of the things that I've noticed coming from Chicago 312, what I see in Seattle is there's really, really progressive values, and there's a lot of people who care so deeply, but there's not that same sort of organizing tension. Right, in what I see in Chicago, particularly in the housing organizing space, is this like very radical energy that says landlords are assholes and we're gonna fucking fight them. And everyone is too polite in Seattle in some ways, right? Like I actually think that for me, like I love being in Seattle because everyone is super nice, but there's a lack of that willingness to be like, we're gonna tear this fucking thing down. And we're not, and that's something that I think that's something that as organizers we really need to work on base building. Yeah, we don't need to be Chicago, but we do need to energize our base. We can't all be policy wonks. Not that there are too many, but maybe there are too many policy wonks in the organizing spaces. And we need just people who are angry and people who will come out and connect with one another. And that's something that we really would like to see in Seattle.
And if I could also add to that, that's actually one of the things that we do at Lavender Rice Project, right? We believe in the power of narrative work. A lot of times when we hear history and stories being told, we are graced with people's lives for free. You get to hear about people's pains and what they went through for nothing, right? You come sit, we come listen, we have conversation, and we don't understand that what you just heard, this testimonial of sorts, right? It's the moment that person reclaimed their power. So when we're talking about policy, when we're talking about, and I heard you when you said it earlier, you know, we got to reach out. Do we know how privileged we are to be able to reach out? Do we know how privileged it is that I'm going to go get in my gasless Honda Civic and I'm going to put her on back to Renton and go get in my house, and that's a privilege. Even if there are things we have to figure out, I am privileged in that way. It is a privilege to be able to walk over to you and say, can I get your number so I can invite you to eat with me? And we can talk maybe. And not even just about a policy, but who you are and where you're from, so I can know what your morals and what your beliefs are. Because we don't have to guess on what somebody's going to stand for. Talk to them. You know, it's a privilege to hear the story. So in our work, in our everyday work, we amplify the voices of the gender diverse, of the black body, of the indigenous body, right, of the immigrant. We amplify this voice so we can hear what the story says, and we can say maybe we can make a decision, or we can bring something to this person that can show them what they can do, right? Because that's what I heard you speak to. But we have to be honest with ourselves, for those of us that are in this privilege of positionality and a privilege of serving these people in our community. I'm sorry, Joy, if I'm spitting, baby. Okay. Some of our folks, especially our people that are currently dealing with houselessness, I think I said 5,600, right, y'all? Y'all remember those numbers, right? They don't have phones to call you. They might miss the 2 that'll connect them to the 12, that'll connect them to get right over here outside. They might not make it. They might not have an Orca card they can find right now to scan it. And if they get on that train right now and somebody says something to them, then they're the problem and they're the issue, but they have nothing else to turn to. So I think that maybe we're going to have to be a little more, we're going to have to give a little more grace, because it is a privilege to be able to be in this room with you all. There are some of our community members that would not have made it here because they didn't have no other option but not to make it here. So they're not going to come to you. But it's only because they don't know you and they can come sup with you. That's why it matters who we call community and what you stand for, right? But it also matters that we make room to say, I'll go set up in the park on Thursdays. Like there are some folks that used to set up every third Wednesday in Capitol Hill Park just to give away food that somebody was getting ready to throw out, because we knew our folks needed to eat. Or if there are extras, we go run it over to the church that's right off Broadway, because we know at 12 o'clock people are going to be coming looking for food. Go meet them and feed them. And ask them, hey, how is it right now? I know you're going through something, but let me hear from you. And maybe the story, right? Because that's where their power is. Maybe that story will influence us on how we're supposed to plan this out. And then we don't have to keep building units that don't have room for wheelchairs to be inside of them.
Before you, I just want to say I love that. Love that. Love that. Love everything everybody's saying. And I want to say that the story was shared. A story was shared today. And the power of us coming together to help resolve that story is important. And it was radio silent. And I just want to point that out, because my heart hurt at the silence. I heard you. I want you to know that.
We had talked a little bit about the rental junk fee ban legislation from the council, and I am just curious to hear, do you support that legislation as it's written, including pet rent?
Yes, and I'll be voting yes on Wednesday because it's going to be in our. So yes, Eric, voting yes on Wednesday. It's at 2 o'clock in the housing. I made all the committees, so sometimes I get confused. Sorry, I was the one who made them up. Okay, so housing, civil rights, arts, and there's one more. Damn it. Okay, the housing committee. Say it again. Yeah, that's what we did with Councilmember Foster. Okay, so yes, voting on that, and then also to, just to go back to what your question was, which I think it was a great question, is that I've realized in politics there's like business, there's different subsects. There's business, and then there's small business. Then you have labor, and then there's different types of labor that goes into that. Then you have nonprofits, that's another sector, and then you have everyone else, right? And some folks might not fit in there. Some, it's just, they don't have access. So we came up with some of the mistakes that we've made on policy, and I've learned lessons on those. Won't go into detail. I'm pretty sure people will remind me if I ever run for re-election. But the things that we do is we say people, process, policy. Who are the people involved that are closest to the issue? What is the process we're running? Are we just throwing out a tweet? Are we sending an email? Are we actually going out to meet people to talk to them about what's going on, what we're doing, how it impacts them? And so making sure that our process is sound so we can have good policy at the end. And that's one lesson that I learned, like just committed to. It's also being accessible. So I don't expect people that come to City Hall to give me their public comment. Sometimes it's reported 100 people were against this policy. And then you go out in the community and people are like, oh, I couldn't make it. I have kids. I work. I've never been to City Hall. I gave you my public comment at the Safeway on 23rd. I thought that was enough. I texted you. These are things. So I take into account all those, even though people might not see it from a news perspective or online comments. Because I'm trying to always just listen to folks that might not have access to City Hall. And look, I'll have coffee with anyone. So like, if someone says, hey, you want to have coffee, I'll have coffee. I know, we might have conflict, that's okay. But as long as you're open to conversation so you can understand perspective and then we can figure out how we move from there, I'm open to it all the time. And sometimes, like Representative Macri said, send us emails. We get thousands of emails and sometimes I miss it. And I apologize to people, be like, look, I missed your thing. Oh, it fell in the back of my head, my bad. It doesn't mean that I don't want to address it. I'll be like, just keep staying in front of me. And a prime example is there's some apartments up here that were bought by a developer, like 11 different apartments. Nordic, thank you. And the people came to a community meeting. They told me what the problem was. They brought it to my attention because I would have never known, what was going on. They brought it to my attention, and we jumped right into action to figure out, okay, what ways can we help solve this to prevent eviction and displacement? And we're on the second phase of that. But that's a prime example of people just bring it to our attention. I want to help. Straight up, it is my job. Seattle Council is the front porch of the city government, and so it's my responsibility to, serve the constituents. So always would love to connect, and then I also want to say that there was silence, and I want to name that, and you talked about Pride Place, and more than happy to connect and get your number to figure out what connections that I can do to help with Pride Place to make sure that you're safe and you're not being targeted in your home, okay? So. And thank you for holding us accountable for that. Seriously, thank you.
Also, thank you for sharing your story. And it's very uncomfortable in the situation you are in. And I don't know how it feels, but I can imagine the pain you're going through. And I think I would like to invite you, and I know Jesser, I always keep Jesser, because Jesser is one of our co-chairs, on the LGBTQ plus community commission. These are the issues we want to hear about. On the Renters Commission, these are the issues we want to hear about. So we would also like to connect with you. And this is why I said earlier on that you all should come to City Hall, write to the mayor, write to the city attorney to push for our own office so that when issues like this rise up, you already know that there's somewhere you could go directly and report, and then the city would come in and help out in those situations. But thank you for sharing.
Two more questions and then we're gonna.
Thank you. Thank you. That's about what boundaries. I would also like to say, like, to stop collaboration. You can go for
So let me first say to all of y'all, thank you. Particularly to the legislators and council out. Because I really do see y'all in me. I've been coming to, I see the values. So I've seen it, so I don't really question it. Maybe I need to be a little bit more active and already remember some of the issues. But I'm one of those people, like, I'm not gonna always be in your face, because I feel like over the years, I've seen you guys. So I just want to say that, so I appreciate y'all. But I was just thinking about the issues and the power. It also comes with collaboration, because I appreciate a good story. It touched my heart, but I think everything's a good struggle story to the nonprofit industrial complex. Take that struggle story and then go get some money off of it. You know, money's really going back to the community. So we have to be really mindful of that. And also, like, how are we collaborating across the intersectionalities of the issues? I think we have to think about it. To me, that's where the real power is at, that we're bringing to the people with the positional power for the vote. Because that's how I see our elected officials. But I see the power in the community. Andrew, like, all in the spaces, in the commissions, that that's where the power is. How you're showing that that's where I see the power. You're powerful, you need to run. Because we're in a place in a community that does a lot of good talk. It's a lot of progressive good talk, nice, nasty. That's what I call Seattle. Very progressive, and we use really great language about implementation. But at the end of the day, no one's invisibilizing people still. When we get a good story, everybody's ready to go out there and how we're doing so great. But you done left out like 3 or 4 communities that have been dealing with the issue for time immemorial. So I'm just encouraging us, and when there's something there, what is the race equity toolkit that you're utilizing in any office? And be able to say that back to the community, this is how we're looking at this issue. If you feel like you're not moving fast enough. If I hear one more thing about some pets, I'm so serious. If I hear one more thing about some pets, even if it is a good issue, but we are denying what's happening in the Black community, I have to probably, like, you're gonna get a nice tongue lashing. The nicest progressive tongue lashing. I'm gonna give it, let me hear one more thing about some pets. And I got a dog, and I love my dog. I love not talking about my babies, though, my human beings. At least want to put that out there, but that was not too.
You're all right. You're all right.
Okay. I went to a political school with my twin sister. She has illness, schizophrenia. It got worse last year. And stayed in shelters because she how her to talking to your voices. And wherever she go. I suggested that she go in the RV. The RV owner had her out because she was not comfortable. And so I also heard that the RVs places around Seattle like that. They're right here. Anybody they like to try to dig a hole to the RV so that it's inoperable, and then force the owner to sign the lease to be so that they simply can't use them from that out. So my question is, what can you do? If the shelter is not an option there in your life, where can my client go?
Listen. Yep. No.
Let's talk after this. So as I mentioned, I work at the Downtown Emergency Service Center, and we last year opened a shelter in downtown specifically for people, it sounds like your sister, who need a private space and need robust services. There, through the pandemic, the city essentially defunded robustly staffed shelter for people with serious psychiatric illnesses, and we fought hard to bring that back. And the city is now putting significant resources into robust serviced shelter for folks in a former apartment building in Pioneer Square. So let's talk.
I want to ask each of you to give one final thought. Anything that you want to share, say to this group, people online. We'll go through and then
Yeah, shoot, kind of on the spot here. Let's see what I can do. I guess one of the things that over the past year plus, I think a lot of people, myself included, at times have felt hopeless in some way, like things are fucked and they're never getting better, and you know, we try and they just keep getting worse. And I got involved with working for Traction, volunteering at first, about a year and a half ago, and I guess one of the things that has brought me a lot of joy with this is seeing just like how many people do want to help. I kind of assumed going in it would just be trans people helping trans people, but my God, there's a lot of cis people who are, you know, who actually care about us. I did not expect that. And like, for almost everybody, they are people who have not been politically active, have not, you know, had this past of organizing and of getting involved, but you reach out to them, you connect with them. People want to do shit. Human beings want to help each other. It is in our nature to do so. And I guess things might keep getting worse for a while, but I do really feel like if we keep coming together, it's not going to stay that way forever.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for being here, you know. It's really great to see a whole bunch of like small but mighty, you know, folks coming together. This is how movements start. This is how we keep doing the work, so to speak. So I just really nice to see everyone, see folks in my community, you know, showing up. It's just, yeah, it's really nice to have folks spend a Saturday, you know, talking about these really important issues. So thanks everyone for being here.
I'm just really grateful. I learned a lot in this short amount of time about things I didn't know that were happening on the ground, and that's super helpful to me. But also I was just reminded that when we create this time and space to talk, we learn a lot about what we need to do, but also are reminded of the incredible assets and strengths and power that we have here in this community to get things done. So I hope this is part of an ongoing conversation that we have together about all the important things we need to get accomplished. So thank you.
I would say this is it's not us sitting here that makes the change. It's all of us. You sitting there, you virtually. We're just here as guests. Anyone could be up here. But I always encourage people two things. Register to vote and vote, please. Because your vote is your voice and it's very important. But also, please speak up. Go to the city hall again and again. I cannot stress that enough. If you don't speak for what you want, people that think they know what you want will be the ones to implement those policies, will be the ones to implement those changes. But when you speak for what you want, then you're involved in making those changes. Thank you.
And I just want to thank everyone, from the organizers to my fellow panelists to the audience, for sharing this moment in time. I hope that this moment in time will lead to something great and something powerful. And I just would leave with two thoughts that really hit home for me, hearing from the questions, which is that I need to rethink what community is, and I need to rethink how coalitions work. I think those are two things that really emerge from the questions that were asked that hold me, and I hope hold all the panelists accountable.
I found myself reflecting as everyone shared their stories about the times when personal experience that people had shared with me in the context of advocacy really made a difference for me in how I approached an issue, approached a bill. And, I guess I just want to assure folks that those individual conversations really do make a difference. I'll say particular to our role as state legislators, people have this impression that the time to lobby is right at that moment when the vote is about to happen in the legislature, and that's the wrong time. the time, I really want to piggyback on the comment that someone made before about needing to develop the relationships, needing to make sure that people know who you are, because this is a completely unrelated thing, but I'll say Nicole and I share a constituent who lives up in Wallingford who is a retired teacher, and she just tirelessly advocates every year about making sure that there's a cost of living adjustment for people who are in her pension plan, which is one of the only ones that does not have it. And over time, that makes such a difference to know that somebody who comes to you and has coffee in August when it isn't the middle of session or you're not in the middle of an election cycle, just to say, hey, don't forget about us. We are a bunch of primarily women who taught for our entire careers, and now we're retired, and we go years without having a cost of living adjustment in our pension that we rely on. So please know that that absolutely makes an impression, that we carry those stories with us as we decide how to approach the work that we do. And thank you for being here today to share your stories.
Thank you to the organizers for getting this all together, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to the tech folks online. I'm not even going to try to repeat what Lamb said, because that's what I took away as well. Understanding who community is, making sure that it is a depth and breadth of people, not just the folks that might be calling you, right, or the lobbyists, those folks, that it really is intentionally a community. And the second thing I will say is that when you all tell us your stories, whether it's online or you send us an email or to me, it helps me understand how that policy is impacting you, because then I'm able to take it back to a department or my team or my colleagues to be like, this is what we intended, why is this happening? And that helps me find the gaps so much quicker, okay, your story, than what, oh, well, these are intended outcomes. If, sometimes stories do help. And so that, for me, I'm a visual person, I'm a storyteller, like I love all that, and that helps me understand how the policy is impacting you. So I just invite you to tell me your story when you feel like it's appropriate. So thank you.
Thank y'all so much for letting me be here, and thank y'all for letting me talk with you all. I learned a lot today. I want to leave with this, though, and it's that housing is about more than the buildings that we stay in. It's the communities that we live in. It's the places we go sit down and have our coffee at, and us stopping by communion to have us a little cocktail as soon as this is over with. It's the parks, and it's the swing sets, and we can walk past the ponds in Cal Anderson Park. And it's also the people. It's the people that we encounter with hellos or head nods, and some that we only know by their eyes, because I see you with your mask on all the time, and it's so good to be this close to one another. I walk right here, baby, in this dress right here. I walk past you in Capitol Hill all the time. And so it's so good to be so close and to hear your voice and your heart in this moment. This is what home is. Home is when you find that. And when you find that, it's worth protecting, and it's not an amenity that you deserve to have to just buy into. You deserve to have it because you're alive. And so as often as you can, share your voice, but as often as you can, take some time to breathe and look around, because there's some folks that don't have a roof over their head and or a home. So as often as we can, let's create it together. Be kind to yourselves.
I want to thank all of our vendors once again for being here, sitting through this, participating, and being a resource. I also want to thank our audience for the amazing questions. You guys, stellar. Thank our panelists, as always. I really appreciate y'all. I know y'all in some way, shape, or form, and I really do think that what you bring is really important for our communities. And I have to do the thanks to B Seattle, QLaw Foundation, Washington, for partnering, because we never do this alone. and I don't want to do it alone. I want you all as community members to know that you can come to any of the organizations and voice. You can go to any of these folks and bring your voice there, and reiterating votes, because that is your voice on paper, and we could lose that, and we don't want to. So when you leave today, I ask you to do two things. Sign up with another organization, get to know somebody, get to know any organization, step in, step up, use your voice, go to City Hall, go to your legislators, go to your representatives, make sure you are telling them your story, because as you heard, they listen, they feel it. And also, enjoy the day. Thank you all.